today, the 13th, August 13th. So I forgot to record the classes, sort of. I really just decided it would probably be easier to do a real quick recording without the classes here, because then I could make it a little bit faster. We did a lot of questions and stuff, which are good to hear, but if you missed class, this is better certainly than not getting any of the notes at all. But if you're in class, you got more of the questions that we talked about and asked in class. So this was our bell work. We said, what is a point? So I'll let you kind of pause it and think about, well, what is a point? What is a line? What is a plane? And then I'm going to go into it now. If you were going to pause it now. Okay. So hopefully you paused it and thought about it. So we said, well, a point, kind of hard to explain really, but a point is like kind of in science, if you're familiar with science, everything is made up of molecules or atoms, to be really, really tiny, tiny and specific. So a point is kind of like that for geometry. Those shapes that we made, the different geometrical shapes, they're really made up of points. And I did some stuff, which unfortunately I can't really do on this recording, but I did some stuff with some 3D things in the room, like this long pencil that I used, and I had this piece of cardboard that I used to represent a plane, and I showed like the different pieces of that. I can't do that on this video, unfortunately. So you can try to look for some. I couldn't find any videos either that I could show that did a better job of 3D images. So unfortunately, you're going to miss out on that part no matter what. But if you think of a point and you think of a line is really an infinite number of points. It's not this straight thing. It's, hold that thought. Actually, I don't want to do that. So it's a bunch of points that we have, and my board is a little off, so it's not going to be straight. But what happens is those points follow a pattern, and that pattern, those points wind up getting super, super, super close together, and they get so close together that they look like they are one solid object. But really, a line is an infinite number of points that follow a pattern. That's why you had the equation of a line. All of those points fit into that equation of a line. A plane is also an infinite number of points. If you're not familiar with what a plane is, it would be like a flat two-dimensional surface, like your desk is sort of a plane. A piece of paper you could sort of think is a plane. The floor sort of is a plane. What you need to understand, and I'm going to skip over, you need to get a book. If you missed the day and you didn't get a book, you'll need to get a book when you come back. We'll make sure you do that. So, oh, and here's the IXLs. By the way, this is up in the room if you want to take a picture when you get in the room. But these are the IXLs for the entire module 1. So I'll kind of scroll down through those. So those are all the IXLs. IXLs are not normally at the same level of the quizzes. Normally the quizzes are harder, more difficult than the IXLs. This one IXL here, though, this one probably is pretty close to the same level as the quiz on that topic. But normally the IXLs are a little easier. They're probably more similar to the exit tickets, those one question quizzes that we're going to do. So just so you know, don't think that you're good to go if you can do the IXLs. You need to make sure you can do the book problems we assign. So this, we didn't really spend as much time. We'll do that probably next class. Those are all the vocabulary you need to know. Actually, you know what? Since I'm recording, I might as well do this. All right, so here are the ones that I said you have just absolutely got to know. And there's more than this that I hope you know. And we'll go over a lot of these for a long, long period of time. That one's not as important, but definitely that one. I mean, hopefully you kind of know what an intersection is, but we talked more about that in class than I will in the video, probably. Line versus a line segment, midpoint, plane, point, bisector. We already did bisector over here too, but two different things on bisector. And then that we'll go over in a whole lesson on its own. So those are the most important ones. You have a glossary in the back of the book, we said. It's in English and it's in Spanish. And we didn't do the stuff at the bottom. All right, so we skipped over page 5 and went straight to page 6. So we said once we did the physical 3D model of a point and a plane and all that in a line, we said we need to understand how to name these different geometrical objects. A point, which you see here, is just one dot, and we use a capital letter. So that point we named A. Right? So this is all in the book too, page 6. What's important about that, though, is that it's a capital letter, but because all things are made up of points, like this line right below it is made up of points. P and Q are not the only 2 points on that line. That whole line is made up of points. We're just naming these 2 specific points on that line. We just picked those 2 and said we're going to name that P and Q. So I can write the name, and a lot of this is down here. I can write the name of a line by using any 2 letters on that line. If there's more than 2 points, I can pick any 2 points I want. But we said there is one thing that you have got to make sure you are in this lesson, and that is specific. If you just wrote PQ, that is incorrect. You have got to tell me specifically what shape are you naming. PQ just tells me there's 2 points there, P and Q. I don't know what shape that is yet. There are a lot of, well, a lot. There are other shapes besides a line that are named PQ or could be named PQ. Or you could have point P and then point Q and no line at all. Just 2 points out in space. Point P and point Q. Somehow you got to tell me it's a line. And there's a couple ways to do that. I could write the word line in front of it. This an I could write line PQ. That tells me it's line PQ. I could write a symbol that means line PQ. It has got to have the arrows. You see there, we have an arrow. There we have an arrow. There we have an arrow. That tells me I am referring to a line that goes in infinite directions. It never ends. It'll continue to go forever. That's what makes it a line. It goes on forever. That's why we write the arrows. You see here down here, arrow, arrow. If I didn't put that, and I just did that, that is incorrect. If I just do that, that is incorrect. Those would, the first one doesn't really refer to anything. This one refers to what is called a line segment. It is a part of a line. It has a beginning and an end. It does not go forever. It is actually going to be, we use this line down here. It is that segment of that line PQ. So they are 2 totally different things. Line PQ is the line that goes on forever and never ends. Line segment is that little red section of line PQ. Now, another way you can name it is using the lowercase letter that they'll sometimes write, and it's called like script or in italics. That's another way you can write it and just say, well, I'm just going to call it, I'm going to name that line M. And again, it's still an infinite number of points, but we can still refer to it as what's called a line. I'll come back to naming in a second. So a plane. So again, a plane is like an object like a desk or a floor or a piece of paper. Like what you have to visualize though, and it was easier to show this in class, a plane continues to go on forever. Just like this line goes on forever up here, these 2 ends go on forever. All of these sides continue to go on forever in whichever direction they're sort of going. I guess another way to say that. It's easier to show it than just to describe it. So if you think of a piece of paper, let's do it that way. All of the edges of a paper don't stop there for that plane. those edges would continue to go out. So it would be like this infinite thing that went on forever, but it stayed at a certain level. Still made up of all points, like it's an infinite number of points, but those points continue to go out so that that paper or desk or the floor or whatever continues to go out and out forever. So there's some things I can't really show, unfortunately, in just a two-dimensional video. But when you have a line intersecting with a plane, so like this, here, let's erase all of this. This image over here, that image right there, there are two lines in that image, and there's one plane. The plane is the shaded area. Again, remember, that's not the whole plane. That plane continues to go on forever in the four directions. So I asked the class a question. If it goes on forever, how do you know whether or not that point is on the plane? Because maybe that plane continues to go up, right? Maybe all this edge continues to go up that way, and maybe it's going to run into V. And so V is a part of the plane. V is on that plane. And the answer, I'll let you think about that. Pause it. I'm going to just keep going, but you can pause it and think about it. So if you're back, the answer is you really can't tell in a two-dimensional image. There's no perfect way to represent a three-dimensional space, a three-dimensional object in two dimensions. So we have to kind of make some assumptions. We have to assume, so here's the big, then now we're getting to the real, you have a quiz, by the way, on Friday, and you'll have an exit ticket either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the class. We have to make the assumption that any point that is in the shaded area, so basically any point that is in the plane that we see, is a part of that plane. Those points are a part. They're not points on like an additional point being put on the plane. They are a point that makes up that plane. Again, because the plane is an infinite number of points, we're just naming those four specific points, we said. Let's go ahead and do a different definition. So I asked a question in class. I said, has anybody ever been a captain of a team? I said, what, do you guys know anything about airplanes? What happens if you're on an airplane, you got hundreds of people on the airplane and the captain gets sick? What's the backup? Well, we said, well, there's another captain. Like you normally have two or even three captains. And some people said, yeah, I've been a captain before. And I said, were you the only captain? And like, no, it was me and another guy or me and another girl. So I said, well, what is that called when you have multiple pilots of the same plane? Or what is it called when you have multiple captains for the same team? And hopefully you're answering that question in your head. If not, it was called a co-pilot or a co-captain, because it was co kind of means you're the captain or the pilot of the same team or the same plane. So there are two terms in this lesson. One would represent, let's do this a different way. So there's a blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. So those points, I put an extra blue dot. Those three dots that are blue and red, if you'll notice, they are all part of that same line. And we're going to name that line in a second, but they're all part of that same line. They are part of the same, remember, linear, part of the same line. Just like co-captain, captains of the same team, co-pilot, pilots of the same plane. These points that are all red, including the ones that are blue and red, so any point that has red in it, actually, tell you what, let me see this. So all of these red points, they're not all on the same line, but they are all in that same shaded area. They are all co-planar. So again, points in the shaded area of, if it, assuming there's a plane in the image, they are all part of that same plane. They're all co-planar, part of the same plane. So those are two big definitions, collinear especially. You'll see that in tons of lessons, not just this lesson. Coplanar doesn't show up as much, but collinear definitely. So V then we have to assume is not part of the plane. It is not in the shaded area. So we assume it is not coplanar. Let's go ahead and name then some lines. So I'm going to kind of skip forward to the one that we didn't even really get to yet in class. If we wanted to name this line right here, the one that is coplanar, that those points are coplanar and they are collinear. They're part of the same plane. They are also part of the same line. So if we wanted to name that line that contains those 3 points, we can use any 2 points. Remember, the line goes on forever because the plane also goes on forever. So I want you to try to name that. You know it's 2 points. I gave you a real quick example. You have kind of the example there. Be very specific. Like I said, you have to use the correct symbols. You also can change the order. So if you'll notice, we have PQ and PQ, but we can flip the order and be QP and QP. I'm not super worried about you. You don't have to like say, oh, well, line QP, and then also write QP like that. I'm not that picky. Like if you either give me the symbol or you write the word line, I'm fine with that. Try to name it, pause it, stop, because I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So first of all, I'll tell you what would not be correct. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. You will get no credit for those on the quiz on Friday. You've got to be very specific. What else would be incorrect? Obviously, if you use the letter S, S is totally wrong. S is not on the line. So if you're trying to name this line right here, you wouldn't use S. I don't think anybody hopefully is going to make that mistake. Now you could use S to name the plane, which I might go ahead and do in this video, even though we didn't even get to it in class. All right, so I guess what else is a mistake? Obviously, if you use 3 letters, that's wrong. So if I said, oh, well, it's line T or Q, that is wrong. Even if you make it a line like that, you do not use 3 letters for a line. You only use 2. So all of those are incorrect. All of those would be incorrect. No partial credit for any of those. But the other thing that will cause you to lose points and maybe not even get any points is you have to name all of the ways that you can possibly name it. That's the question on the quiz. I'm telling you what the quiz question is. Name the line below in every way possible. So I would suggest you do it like this. Since I can switch the order, I would pick a letter, so T, and then I use 2 letters, and then just pick the next letter, the next point. I shouldn't say letter, I should say point. And then put your symbol. So there's one name. I wouldn't even switch the order. Like, even though you can switch the order, that would not be my process. That works probably for lines a lot easier than it does for planes. Planes, you're going to probably miss something if you do. If you don't follow the process I'm giving you right now, you're probably going to miss some of the names for the plane because it has way more. I would then use T again, and now instead of using R, I would use the other point, Q. Next, I would go to R, so I just did point T. Now I would go to point R and make that the first letter, and now I would put the other 2 points with that. So I put R as the first letter, and then I use the 2 points with R. And then I would so I'm done with R, and now I would do Q. So again, Q would go with the first point T, Q would go with the second point or the middle point R, and make sure you put your symbol. If you do not put the symbol, I will mark it wrong, like the whole question. You don't get points for every single individual one. You need to know how to name the line all the way and not just, I don't want it to just be a guessing thing where you guess some stuff half correct. I need to know that you understand how to do it. So those are not all of the possible ways, because there's this one other thing here. Don't forget about that. If you have a lowercase letter, that is not a point. There's no point associated with that. Points are named with capital letters. So the other one we could name it, I'll just write it here, is line C. So I don't expect you to rewrite all of these and just put the word line in front of them. I'm not going to make you do that. You just need to do those once, but then don't forget about this one here. So a plane is pretty similar. Oh, no. There we go. So a plane is pretty similar. I'll just go through, there's one difference that we did do in class. I'll go through that first. So we can name a plane with any 3 points that will form a triangle. So those 3 points, and again, the 3 points are in the shaded region, so they are part of that plane. So that's the first rule, is the points have to be part of the plane in order to name it. But then you also have to be able to form a triangle with those points. So they have to be coplanar, so they have to be in the shaded region, and you have to be able to form a triangle. So I want you to think about, well, when would I not be able to form a triangle with 3 points? Like, when is that even possible? Like, if I put more points on here, I mean, I could form a triangle with those 3, right? That's a triangle. I put a point down here. Well, I could form a triangle. They're like, when can you not form a triangle with 3 points? So think about that. I'm just going to keep going. So pause it. And then when you're ready, go. So the only situation where you can't form a triangle is over here. If 3 points are collinear, you cannot form a triangle. All you can do is draw a straight line through them. So the mathy version that you'll probably read either in the book or on a quiz, I don't remember what my quiz was like, or maybe on the EOC, you can name a plane with any 3 points that are non-collinear. I think I've been spelling that wrong, collinear. Yeah, I haven't been spelling that wrong. That's why I teach math, not English. So if the points are non-collinear, that means they're not on the same line. And if they're not on the same line, then we can form a triangle, which means we can use them to name. So name them using BDC. If I wanted to name, actually, I guess I'll start you off. I'm not going to probably do all of them, but if I wanted to name this plane over here, so the shaded region is the plane, I can use any points that are not on a line. So I cannot use these 3. Those are collinear. You can't use collinear points. I can't make a triangle with those 3 points. So I cannot use those at all. So I can use any other combination of points. So I personally would just start with S. I do the same thing I did for lines. And now I just put 2 points after S. T and R. I can still keep doing S and T because I can put Q there. And that's it. I can't, there's nothing else I can do with S and T except for the R and the Q. I could still do S. Oh, and you can change the order just like with lines. And now I can put R first, or not first, but second. So S and R, and then I can put the Q. Well, I could put S and R, and then I could put the T. Oh, and you have to write plane in front of it. There's no symbol. You have to write the word plane. Again, if you do not write the word plane, it will be wrong because there are some shapes that have 3 letters. I should say other shapes that have 3 letters, and I wouldn't know what shape you're talking about. So I may be okay if you just write it once and kind of like, you could just say plane and then like draw an arrow down or something like that if you don't want it all the way out. And you know, once you write it once, if you just write it really sloppy, I'm fine with that. As long as I know you understand, you have to name it plane, whatever. So again, keep going until you like run out of all the options with R. So I can't do anything else but SRQ and SRT. I could put S first and then do Q second. So as you can probably guess, I'm going to have that twice. And then T. So as you can see, there's a lot more ways to name a plane. You have 6, just with S as the first letter. You have 6, which means with Q as the first letter, you're going to have 6 again. With T as the first letter, you're going to have 6 again. So there's like 19 different ways to name a plane. Well, to name this particular plane. It has 4 points on it. The 19th way, if you're curious, we scroll back up. There we go. Is this little guy right here. Now it is a capital letter, but if you notice, it's kind of like it looks different. It's slanted. It's again, it's called script or italics, and there's no specific point drawn. Like all of these capital letters have a point there. This capital letter A does not. That means it's naming the entire plane, not just a single point. So we could also say plane A. We didn't even get to this in class, so if you're watching this, you might have seen it already in class if you showed up for the next lesson. Let's see, what else did we do? Again, a lot of the stuff I can't really show, unfortunately, because we did it just like in class with three-dimensional cardboard stuff that I had in these pencils, these long pencils I use. Collinear, non-collinear, planar, and not. So non-coplanar would be not on the same plane. Oh, we talked about the intersection. Again, this is something I can't really show you. But if two lines intersect, you kind of can take two pencils yourself. What if these two lines intersect, or any two straight objects, really? I'll draw. So if two lines intersect, the question was, what does the intersection look like? Well, what that means is, where are the lines touching? Are they touching in a whole bunch of spots? Are they just touching in one spot? Wherever they are touching, what does that spot look like? Well, if you look at all these different points where two lines are crossing, they are only touching at one single point. So the intersection of a line and a line is just a point. We also said if I took a plane, and this one's even tougher, well, actually, I can show it over here. If you intersect with a line and a plane, like this line right here is intersecting that plane, well, it's only touching that plane at one specific, like think about putting a pencil through a piece of paper. It only touches the paper right at that spot where it goes through it. That's kind of what I did in class. So this line is only touching that plane at that one point. They're sharing that point is really what they're doing. That's what an intersection is. It's a shared point, or a shared series of points if it's more than one. So the intersection of a plane and a line is a point. In this case, it's specifically point R. We are going to do the intersection of multiple planes in class next class, so I'm not going to do that. Then that's really hard to do. Actually, there's a picture in the book, I think, that shows them. Let's see. Did we do anything else? I think that might, well, again, some stuff I can't show, but out of the stuff that I can show, I think that covers everything that we got to. So I will record the second part of the lesson, which will probably have a little bit of overlap with this, and you'll get the rest of the lesson, as well as we have to do a whole nother lesson before your quiz on Friday. So if you have questions, just see me in class.